Plans are Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, a Democrat whose district includes Chicago's northwest side and western suburbs. On Zoom, Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democrat whose district includes Chicago's north side and some northwest suburbs. And Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, a Democrat whose district includes some southwest suburbs. We also invited all the Republicans in Illinois' congressional delegation, but they either declined or have not responded to our requests. We thank the three of you for joining us. Representative Ramirez, I want to start with you, and we should mention that President Trump is speaking to a group of folks at the Capital One Arena right now, where he is expected to sign some of those executive orders that we mentioned. But we've heard him promise, and you and other local and state officials were canvassing in the community today with Know Your Rights immigration information. What were you hearing from people in the community today? What are their concerns?
I mean, I heard a lot of fear. There was a gentleman at the train station who said to me, I have papers, and then pulled out his employment authorization card to show me because he was fearful that if he didn't show me that and if I was ICE, he'd get deported. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of questions. Who does this apply to? Who will he deport? And so I think it's really important that we're letting people know, regardless of your legal status, you have rights, and here are the phone numbers you can be calling in case you need resources.
Have you heard anything, or what is the latest that you've heard about the reported raids that the Trump administration is expected to start in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, no, we have not heard anything clear indication of how many officers or when they're coming. Of course, we've read a number of things, but it also sounds like the borders is rethinking and considering what he thinks is the priority for this week.
Representative Underwood, you attended the inaugural luncheon today. What was the mood in the room? What did you see and hear?
Well, I did attend the inauguration, the ceremony, and the luncheon. It was and so MAGA was there. They were jubilant, and we saw the peaceful transfer of power, which is what our country stands for. It's what we've come to expect from inaugural ceremonies, and I was honored to be able to participate.
You're also the acting ranking member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security for the current Congress. Do you have any concerns for President Trump's spending plan on the border, especially based on what we've heard during today's ceremonies?
I think President Trump is going to quickly confront the reality that his very expensive plans for completely throwing out the activities along the southern border to detain hundreds of thousands of migrants, to immediately begin deportation flights, which the American taxpayers would be paying for, will run into some pretty significant budgetary realities, while he also wants to enact his tax cuts for the billionaires. So, I think that the Trump administration and the Republicans in the House and Senate are going to have to all get on the same page. My responsibility is making sure that our nation remains safe and secure. My responsibility is making sure that families across Northern Illinois know that they have a strong champion and voice in Washington, D.C., and making sure that folks' civil rights and liberties are not restricted.
Congressman Quigley, you were also out in the community today doing some service in honor of King Day and speaking with constituents. What were some of your biggest concerns? What are some of your biggest concerns?
Well, obviously what my colleagues have just talked about, and the fact that there's great uncertainty, and I think the fear is intended. They want to do this. It's almost a campaign of terror just by letting folks know the sort of Damocles is over them. But, as troubling as that is, and it is, there are a lot of other issues that will be the issues of our generation for future generations. Front page of the Tribune today talked about a record number of climate disasters in Illinois in 2024. The president basically announced a war on anything sustainable, drill, baby, drill, movement away from EV vehicles, a movement away toward recognizing climate change as the issue for future generations. That's just one of the many issues that'll be extraordinarily difficult to fight back on in the next 4 years.
The president, he also laid out some of his concerns today, his biggest concerns that he says the country is currently facing.
We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people.
Congresswoman Ramirez, what's your reaction to that statement?
Yeah. You know, as I was hearing Congressman Quigley talk about rolling back so much of environmental protections, all I kept thinking about was he has declared a war on the environment. So when I hear him talk about how we have spent money on other borders and not the American people, it's really difficult for me to hear him say that and know that the richest people in the world were at the front row of his swearing in, celebrating the billionaire, celebrating the creation of Billionaires' Bill of Rights. It feels great dissonance in this moment.
Congresswoman Underwood, during the inauguration, Trump also promised to fulfill Dr. King's dream for this country. We also heard Detroit pastor Lorenzo Sewell quoted at length from Dr. King's historic I Have a Dream speech. What did you make of that messaging?
Well, before he said those things, he said it was Liberation Day. He said that we were going to reclaim the Panama Canal. He said that we were going to have the Gulf of America. You know, I saw Donald Trump make a lot of promises in order to distract the American people from his plan to reward the billionaires sitting in that front row next to his family members and make sure that those folks got a tax break at the expense of hardworking families across northern Illinois. And so I do not have any kind of conviction that Donald Trump is inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. And I take him at his word when he makes these promises to harm families in our community.
So speaking of the billionaires, both of you have referenced, of course, you know, we saw folks like Jeff Bezos as well as Mark Zuckerberg sitting in the audience there. Congressman Quigley, President Biden, he used his farewell address to the nation to deliver warnings that he believes are of an oligarchy of the ultra-rich that are taking over the country. Do you see that taking shape, and how should Americans respond?
Well, look, we had a sample of it at the end of the last year. I mean, we had a bipartisan, bicameral bill to fund the government for the next several months that was agreed to by everyone. And suddenly the newly formed oligarch comes in and announces that it's dead and threatens Republicans with primaries if they support it. So I don't know if he's President Musk or just our most prominent of oligarchs. My friend, Ms. Underwood, talked about the tax bill. Let's just remember the last one grew the economy by about 1%, but cost us $2 trillion in debt and only benefited somewhere between 1% and 3%. The next proposal is going to try to do roughly the same thing, but it's going to go after Medicaid and Social Security to pay for it.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Obviously, the three of you have your work cut out for you there in D.C. Representatives Ramirez, Quigley, and Underwood, thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Up next.